Hello besties! Today we are doing a s'mores tumbler design. Look at how cute she is. I can't wait to teach you guys, but before that, make sure you join our Misfit Makers Facebook community and check out our website at misfit-makers.com. So I'm going to be using one of these big 32-ounce plants from the Steel Magnolia. Look how big she is. We're going to start off by popping the butt. Okay, you're going to use a flathead screwdriver and a hammer and some force behind that to pop it off. It's actually really easy. I will show you guys why I did this later, but here we are. That part is completely optional. Okay, so I've taken some paint. I'm using Pop of Color by CCDIY, and I'm going to paint my tumbler using a makeup brush from Wet n Wild. These are some of my favorite you can get at the $1.25 store, and I'm just going to paint my tumbler to look like a s'more. So the graham crackers on the top and the bottom, a big spot for the marshmallow, and a darker spot for the chocolate. You also see that I mixed some red. That's going to be for my bottom. I want my bottom to kind of look like the fire, you know, that you roast your marshmallows on. I don't know if I'm going to achieve that look, but we're certainly going to try. So I am just going to use my brush to blend my colors as best as I can. Don't worry about it being too streaky or anything like that. Just make sure you are aware of what glitter you're using. I'm going to be using very flashy glitter, so my streaks are not going to show up under my glitter. But if you are using a fine glitter, make sure that you use spray paint or do a much better of a paint job than I did, or do two coats. Two coats usually smooths out any of those streakiness. After we paint the tumbler, we are going to paint the butt red. Remember, I kind of wanted to mimic fire or like the embers burning. So we're going to paint this all red, like a little orangey red, and just making sure I get all the crevices. You want to make sure it dries really good. The reason I popped the butt is because I want to add epoxy and some glitter into it. That way it kind of has some dimension to it. You kind of have to see it to know what I'm talking about. Okay, so let's get started. After your cup gets completely dry, the paint is dry, you want to mix 5 ml total of epoxy, 2.5 of A and 2.5 of B. I'm using CCDIY FastSet to cover my whole tumbler. I am not going to be using the whole 5 ml. I just never mix any less than that. So I probably used about 3 ml total. So you see I have a bunch of glitter. I grabbed 2 of kind of the same color, a chunky and a finer mix. So I'm starting by sprinkling in my chunky gold. I believe this is Athena from Peachy Olive. Most of the glitters that I'm using today are from Peachy Olive. I will make sure they are added in the supply list. So check out our supply list in our besties group or on YouTube when this is posted on there. Okay, so I'm using my fingers to kind of just sprinkle. I am very, very heavy-handed when it comes to glittering, so I'm making sure that I don't go crazy. So like I said, I start off with my chunky glitter. I would like to point out that I did not epoxy the butt of the glitter. Okay, next I'm going in with my chunky white. This is also from Peachy Olive as well. I will make sure to list all the glitter colors. Again, I start off with my chunkies because then I want my fine glitters to fill in all the cracks. Next, I'm going with this beautiful chunky holographic. Again, just sprinkling it on. Do not overthink it. If it travels onto your other colors, it's okay. You kind of want it to kind of all mesh together. Okay, next I am going to go in with my finer white glitter and cover up the white spot. I apologize that I'm a little off frame. It's just hard to see from the angle I was at, so I apologize, but I'm filling in all the cracks for every color. So like I said, I pulled a chunky and a fine of each color. That way I could start off with chunky and then move on to my finer color. Okay, I decided to add a little bit of more of this chocolate holographic color because I want it to be a little bit darker. And then I'm gonna add a finer like brown chocolate for my brown part of my tumbler. So you want to kind of angle it so your glitter kind of falls into the section. So you kind of want to ombre it a tiny bit, but not as much as you would do with a traditional ombre, because you still want to see the sections of graham cracker, chocolate, marshmallow, graham cracker. Okay, so after you've glittered your tumbler, I'm gonna mix 20 mLs of epoxy. I am also using FastSet here, and I'm mixing Campfire by Peachy Olive into it. Of course, it's the perfect color for a campfire. It looks like flames, like fire, so I'm super excited. So 20 ml seems to be like the perfect measurement to fill up the bottom of the 24-ounce plumps and the 32-ounce plumps. I usually have just like an insy-bincy bit left. So what I want to do is I want to pour it slowly, let it settle, let all the bubbles rise. I don't know if I captured it in the video, but I let it sit for a little bit, and you see all those bubbles kind of rising up. You want to torch them really quickly. Do not hammer it on there. You can burn your epoxy. You can ruin it. Just don't do it. Just very, very quickly. So also I'm going to take my finger here and just kind of rub some epoxy around that rim and then sprinkle some glitter on that bottom, making sure that like none of those sharp chunky pieces are sticking out. So I'm just going to take my little glitter spoon and kind of drizzle it a little bit. Right now you can see all those bubbles. You see all those little white dots? Those are all bubbles, and I'm gonna be popping them with my torch. Like I said, I don't know if I captured it in the video, but just make sure to take your torch and torch them really, really quickly. So after your epoxy dries, you wanna go ahead and epoxy your cup. So while that's curing, I'm gonna take my Epoxy Sculpt Part A and Part B. This is also from CCDIY. It is an epoxy, so you want to have equal measurements. I kind of just do 2 little balls that are about the same size. Do not overthink it. If they're a little bit off, it's okay. Some people like to weigh it. I just like to go for it. I promise you it's always worked. So you want to knead it in really, really good. Okay? Scrunch, crunch, 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 crunch. We're going to be making our marshmallows. So they are very, very easy to make. Take little itty bitty pieces and just use your fingers to kind of form those little marshmallows. It takes about 24 hours for these to fully cure. So just set them aside like on a silicone mat or a plastic mat where they're not going to stick to a surface. So I made about 10 or so, or probably more, but I only used about 6 or 7. But it's always nice to have some extra marshmallows in your bag of goodies. So like I said, while I was making my marshmallows, I put 1 coat of CCDIY FastSet on my cup, and now it's nice and cured. We're gonna sand it down really good because we use chunky. There's some little high spots there, but sand it and then wipe it off with some alcohol or some water. Water is my preference, and then we can put our decal and start on those drips, 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 drips. So you guys can kind of see here how the butt looks. I meant to show you guys, but the glitter looks like it's suspended because the epoxy is in there and the glitter. But anyway, let's put our decal on. I made a big mistake. I usually layer my decals before I put it on my tumbler, but I accidentally put the transfer tape on the wrong layer. So we're gonna try layering it on the cup and hopefully it works. So I went ahead and put my first piece down, and then I smoothed it out, and then I'm gonna put my top layer. I got this SVG from Etsy. I will link it in the supply list. It is super cute and it goes perfect with the design and perfect with the size of the cup. I love big decals. I love big decals, cannot lie. Okay, anyway. Oh my gosh, I digress. Anyway, so I put my decal on there and it actually went out got on there really good. I was very impressed with myself because I usually never do it this way because it never works for me. But anyway, here's the decal. She looking cute. And then we're going to get ready for our drips. If you are new to doing drips, I would recommend you put one coat of epoxy over your decal to protect it and then go on to the drips. But we're professionals here, so I'm just gonna go for it. So I mixed about 30 mLs of epoxy, part A and part B, and I am using FastSet by CCDIY. I start off by mixing it really good. Then I'm gonna add some pure white color of Pop of Color, just a couple of little scoops. I ended up adding a little bit more. Just make sure it's not translucent. I also am going to add some glitter, some Snow Angel from Peachy Olive, just to give it a little bit of pizzazz. And I'm going to be adding some Nice and Thick from CCDIY. It is a thickening agent, and I cannot tell you how much you should add because it all really depends on how your process is going. I like to add about 2 little baby spoons at a time and just kind of feel the thickness. If you are new to epoxy drips, I would recommend using regular epoxy as opposed to FastSet. FastSet tends to flash cure on you if you wait too long or you put too much paint, or it's just a little temperamental. So anyway, I am going to go ahead and start putting my drip. It has been about, I don't know, maybe a good 10 minutes that I've been mixing epoxy. So my epoxy is very thick. A way that you can kind of test it is by dripping it on the side of your cup, on your mixing cup, and seeing if you like that flow. So I start off by kind of just doing a big thick strip around the top. If you want it to drip in a certain place, I would go a little thicker on that spot. So if I want to drip right on the back because I don't want it to go over my decal too much, I would put a big glob on one certain spot and let gravity do its thing. Okay, I'm sorry because of this angle. There is really no good angle to do it because if I hold it onto a side, it will start dripping sideways and then my drips will be all wonky. Okay, if you want it to drip a little bit more and your epoxy's already setting, grab your torch as you see here and very quickly apply a little bit of heat until you see the epoxy rolling down. Okay, this process goes by really quick. Look how nice it looks. Oh, I'm so excited. Do not be discouraged, okay? After your epoxy dries, you want to go ahead and start your next drip. By the time your next drip is ready, your first drip is going to be hard enough to not move anymore. So I'm going to use that Rustic Oak Dispersion Paint by CCDIY. A little goes a long way. This is not like Pop of Color. This is super pigmented. As you see, I only put a few little drops in there. Again, I mixed about 20 to 30 mLs of epoxy, which is way more than enough. Again, I'm using FastSet by CCDIY. And again, I repeat, if you are new to doing drips, I would recommend using regular epoxy, not FastSetting. And I'm gonna add a little scoop of glitter to give it a little bit of more pizzazz. And I'm also gonna add some Nice and Thick. It's a thickening agent to help the process of your epoxy thickening for you to get ready to do that drip. So I add about 2 little scoops at a time. If I were to say how many scoops I added, I'd probably added anywhere from maybe 4 to 6 scoops total, just to get that process going. Make sure you're always mixing and mixing and mixing. Don't let your epoxy just sit because it can flash cure on you. If your epoxy does flash cure on you, don't be discouraged. Just start over. It's okay. It's a process. Trust me, my epoxy flash cured lots of times before I got it right. Again, a good way to test the flow is by using the edge of your cup, just kind of to see if you like that flow. Okay, so we're going to do the same process as we did with the white drip. But this time we're going to focus on doing like our bigger globs in between the other drips. That way they're not like super overlapping, but really it does its own thing. So you just kind of have to go with the flow. Don't get flustered, just go with the flow. If something goes a little wonky, have a little baby wipe by you or a piece of I can't think of the word, paper towel with some alcohol, and that way you can wipe it down and it'll come right off. So don't get too discouraged, okay? Just go with the flow and trust the process. Again, going around your rim, kind of shaking it a little bit. I like to tap it a little bit to see how it's flowing. And if your epoxy has starting to set quicker than you anticipated, you can always get your torch and torch it a little bit. But not too much because it will burn and then it will flash cure and get all crunchy and goopy. So it has to be very, very, very little heat. Okay, so I'm just gonna make my way around there, and now look, I'm torching it a little bit because I want it to drip a little bit. If you notice, some of my drips overlap the other ones and some of them are in between my white drips. So like I said, it kind of does its own thing. While the epoxy is still gummy but not runny, you want to place your marshmallows. This is optional, obviously, but I think a nice little touch. So I'm gonna place my little marshmallows that I made with the culture sculpt and just kind of place them around my tumbler on the chocolate drip, because obviously my marshmallow drip is already cured. So I'm just gonna push them in there. You want your epoxy to be almost set, like it's just in the gummy phase, because if it's too runny, your marshmallows will start to sag. So just kind of play around with it. You may have to babysit it for a little bit in case your marshmallows try to move on you. So anyway, I think it turned out super cute. So now we're going to epoxy the cup once it's completely dry, once your drips are dry. And I mixed about 30 mLs of regular artist resin. You do not want to put FastSet over drips or like any 3D art, because sometimes the epoxy, the FastSet is a little bit thicker and it tends to pool at the little crevices, and whenever epoxy pools, there's more chances of getting little bubbles. So you want to kind of avoid that, and a way to avoid that is by using a thinner viscosity, which the artist resin is perfect for covering over drips. I love to cover over my drips. Some people prefer not to, and that's completely fine. I just know that I'm a picker, and if there's a little spot of the drip that's picking up, I will pick at it. So I'm just gonna go around my marshmallows, around my drips, and then after I'm done, I will torch it. And here is the finished product, besties. What do you guys think? Are you guys gonna try it? And if so, make sure to tag me. Tag Misfit Makers or hashtag MMBX. Thank you so much for our Patreon members, and make sure to subscribe and follow to our Facebook group and our Patreon and YouTube. Till next time, see you guys later.